Hello, and welcome to the Gray Area, where I give interviews with developers, talk about gaming news and reviews, and focus on the interrelationships between gamers. My name is Genesee Gray, and this is the 91st episode in a weekly series called Don't Starve. Here with me is Kevin Forbes, programmer designer at Klei Entertainment. Welcome, Kevin.
Hi.
Last week's episode was a discussion about MagFest and my Women in Gaming panel. Please visit www.genesee.com to add to the forum discussion on that topic and to tell me your story. Today is Tuesday, January 22nd, and we're going to talk about Don't Starve, the game design, and hopefully have some fun. So let's start with you, Kevin. What is your news of the week? What's happening in your world?
Well, I guess the news of the week for the game, at least, is that we're working on our next update, which will go live, I think, next Tuesday.
Okay.
Our cutoff days internally are the preceding Wednesday, and then we do some testing and whatnot. We actually don't have a name for this update yet, but it's pretty big. It's one of the bigger ones we've ever done. I
Ooh.
guess I can tell you that there'll be a video probably on Friday, our usual kind of teaser video, but
Mm-hmm.
there will be walls. So,
Okay. See, I'm still
amongst
getting
other
used to the
things.
terrain. Now we have walls. That's good because I really want to build a house.
Everyone always asks for a house. Yeah, it's
I
funny.
know. All right, so let's start with your stuff. Tell me about you as a child. Were you into games? How did you get involved with video games?
I think my dad brought home a computer from work, like one of those really cruddy portable computers from the 80s. It was like it was the size of a desktop tower, but it had a handle, so they called it a portable computer. And I think I was about maybe 5 or 6, and I think the first game I ever played on it was probably some off-brand ASCII graphics Pac-Man clone, and it was awesome. So kind of ever since then, we got our own computer about a year later, and I was a little nerd, so I played a lot of it.
Nice. Now, looking over your profile, you were a personal trainer, a weapons specialist, a safety person at Lear, salesman
Oh, I'm not
executive.
supposed to talk about that anymore. I'm sorry.
It is on your LinkedIn, buddy.
Oh, crap.
Just telling you. That's a lot of diverse jobs, and I definitely want to ask you about some of those because I just have to know, like, gun boss? You were a gun boss? What is
I
that?
think there may be more than one Kevin Forbes on LinkedIn.
Okay, because man, that person has like 50 years of
A
jobs that
way
I would
more
be
exciting
so.
life than I have, yeah.
Okay, well, that's good to know. So tell me how you ended up entering the gaming industry and becoming a programmer.
Well, I did computer engineering and computer science in university, and at the end of, and then I took a victory lap in grad school and did some like kind of animation, computer animation focused work
Okay.
for that. And then at the end of that, this is 2005 or so. I was going to actually go to San Francisco to work like with an artist, doing like technical stuff for
Mm-hmm.
him in installations, but I ran into some like visa issues at the border, and by that time, my wife and I had sold all of our furniture and rented out our apartment and everything
Oh,
in
Canada.
Toronto. Yeah, in Toronto, and we had really nowhere else to go, so we just came to Vancouver because we had friends here. And Vancouver, at least at the time, was kind of the center of the video gaming development world in Canada. And my skills were appropriate, and I loved video games, so I got a job at a company called, well, at the time it was called Blue Castle Games.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's Capcom Vancouver, I believe, because they got bought out. But yeah, I worked on a baseball game for a couple of years there.
Well, I hope you like baseball.
I don't, but
Oh,
I learned a lot. Actually, it's strangely compelling now. When I travel in America, I often go to baseball games because they're cheap and you don't have to pay too much attention or know what's going on. And it's pretty fun. But I flash back to like years of making baseball guys catch balls accurately on the Xbox 360, and I'm glad I'm not doing that anymore.
okay. Yeah, trial by fire a little bit, huh? So, what kind of games did you begin on? Your very first game, other than the baseball, that you felt like maybe you, I don't know,
Oh,
would you
like
call yourself officially a game designer?
for
What?
fun? I guess when I
Yeah.
was a kid, I made little text adventures and like kind of like Sierra
Oh.
games, but without the graphics that were not very good. And
Sierra did
some
King's Quest, is that right?
yep, that
Yeah.
was one of their earlier ones. Roberta Williams did a whole series. There's like 7 of them or something. But yeah, so stuff like that. Really really like I used to program games in BASIC when I was, I don't know, like 12 or something like that. And I would make, I think I made a little hockey game that was mostly a fighting game. I made like some Star Trek related stuff, like really embarrassing stuff.
Oh,
But I was learning to program, so
never laugh at Star Trek.
yeah.
It's kind of an interesting pairing, the writing aspect with the programming. You don't often find people that sort of have those dual skills going at once. How did you end up being a writer, and what was the first thing you kind of contributed on as far as story?
Well, for video games, it would be this one.
Mm, okay.
Like, I mean, I have kind of strong feeling. I'm not a huge fan of like really heavy narrative in games. Like
Mm.
some people like it. I'm more of a mechanical person, but I like theming and very strong theming and world building and that kind of thing. I'm just not big on plot because I think player action should have primacy over designer intention in that case. But yeah, for Don't Starve, just there's a lot of text that needs to be written, and I've written most of it, and actually there's some people as we get closer to release, our team's grown a little bit, and some of the other gameplay programmers are aping the existing style for the characters, which is great. So I don't need to write like more descriptions of rocks and twigs and things
Okay.
like that. For how would a librarian look at this? How would a robot think of this? But but yeah, I mean that's the first professional thing. I mean, like as a hobby, I used to in high school I was pretty involved with the school newspaper, which is again more nerd points for me. And then for a couple of years I ran a web comic. So yeah, super nerd points for that one. But yeah, and even today I do make comics that other people write or sorry, that other people draw, and sometimes I draw them myself and
Ah,
publish them with a group called Cloudscape Comics.
okay. Is that Giants on Main Street?
Yep, Giants of Main Street was our most recent book. It came out last year. We put out about a book a year. So and we're actually just wrapping up our latest book called Waterlogged. It's about pirates and the sea and stuff like that. And I just actually finished my story for that way past the deadline about 2 days ago. So
Ah,
happy
okay.
not to be staring at that anymore for a while.
Well, take me through the process of being a writer for a game because, like you said, I mean, this particular game isn't very narratively driven. It's sort of discover the world and everything in it kind of by yourself. And there are little, cool things that different characters say when you point at things. But so, as a writer, do you sit down as they're beginning to, talk about the concept of the game and all that? Where do you get involved, and what is your task? Like, how does it begin in the process
Well,
of it?
I mean, everything we've done on Don't Starve has been pretty ad hoc. It's we're kind of running around trying to figure it out as we go. With the writing in particular, I think a couple of months into the project, Jeff, our creative director, came and talked to me, and he was having trouble thinking of like what type of characters would fit in the world and what type of characters would not fit in the world, at least like in terms of appearance and
Hmm.
that kind of thing. And it became apparent that we needed, even if we weren't going to present it to the users, at least yet, we needed a backstory. So that at least internally we can stay consistent to some vision for the world itself. So I think I wrote a couple of versions of that, which have not seen the light of day. um, I kind of forget. There was a really complicated one. There was like three factions, and like the pigmen represented something, and there were like these
Ah,
like fairy creatures that protected nature and demons, and it was very complicated and with an ancient civilization stuff like that. But actually, as complicated and overwrought as that was, it was actually pretty helpful in terms of constraining the character design a bit in the game, and even constraining the mechanics of the game. Because with a game like Don't Starve, we have no shortage of ideas for new stuff to put in the world, and sometimes I'm thinking of Krampus right now. The stuff doesn't go over well because it doesn't actually gel with the world in the minds of players. So having a filter there is good,
okay.
and that's kind of the purpose that those internal documents serve. Before launch, we're actually going to go a little more in depth with Wilson's background. That stuff is written, and there's some. I can't say too much, but there's some interesting things coming about that soon. And then we do need to figure out how to end the game as well. So
Okay,
I'll
yeah, that
invent
was one of my
something for.
questions. Does it go on forever or is it going to end?
Well, we debate that actually internally quite a lot because we want it to be a game that people can stay with for quite a while.
Hmm.
Obviously, 'cause, I mean, it helps us as more people play our game and they talk about it and more sales, etc.
Right.
But also like we want people to get their money's worth and to feel like they're getting a good entertainment value that we're providing. Um, but at the same time, like people do. A lot of people actually do need some narrative closure. Like they need to see a story with a beginning and a middle and an end.
Hmm.
So I think our intention with that is to have a story mode where you play as Wilson, at least in the beginning, and you progress through a series of worlds of increasing difficulty. And then probably there'll be a little bit of story sprinkled in. Like in the beginning right now, Maxwell kind of pops up and says something cryptic.
Yeah, you're kind of
Um,
dropped in the middle of a story. You don't really have, you know,
yeah, that's the best way to start a story. I think.
you're like Bethesda, aren't you?
Yeah, it's like, what's going on? Eat. Um,
Yeah. Eat.
but yeah, you'll see a little more. He'll pop his head up every so often and fill you in a little more as you get closer to the terrible conclusion. And then at the end, we actually don't have a movie player embedded in the game, so cutscenes are kind of interesting for us. I think we'll end up doing some kind of emotion comic type thing for the ending. Native client doesn't have movie players easily available for us, so we're a little
Okay.
constrained there. And also, we don't want to make a big, like, overblown movie for this particular game. It just doesn't really fit. So something a little more subdued, but giving some closure and saying what happens to Wilson, and hopefully tying that to what you did throughout the rest of the game. So, like, if you act as a vegetarian or you kill every
Ooh.
rabbit you see, that you should probably get some kind of recognition for that in the end.
So there's consequences. It's keeping track of these things.
Well, it's not yet, but
Okay, but it will.
yeah. If you remember Sid Meier's Pirates, did you ever play that game?
I did not.
Okay, it's a pretty good game. It actually comes out every about 10 years or 5 years in a new version. But when I was a kid, I played it a lot in like glorious 16 color graphics, and you basically play as a pirate, and it's pretty open world, sandboxy thing. You get new boats, you get new pirates to follow you around, and you work your way up. And there's an economy kind of thing. But then at the end of the game, eventually you retire, and it tells you how well you did based upon like your exploits. Like, did you find the treasure? Did you find your long lost sister? Did you bank a lot of money in your personal account? And then they give you a title at the end, like you're a bartender or a hobo or like a governor or something. There's a whole track, and
Okay.
that always resonated with me. Where it's like, oh, okay, well, you can play as much as you want and how you want, but at the end, it's all tallied up, and you see what happened. So we're toying around with ideas like that. And we're not quite sure exactly which direction that's going to go, but probably something sort of along those lines.
Okay. Well, I mean, there's a lot of directions you can see, like that the game definitely has legs that could go for a long time. You know, you could end up like MMO, cooperative Wilson play. You know,
Oh, I've never. Everyone always mentions multiplayer. It's come up once or twice.
we
Yeah,
want to build a massive city.
yeah. I mean, the game has actually changed a lot since the beginning. Like, it was a lot more settlers in the beginning when we
Settlers
were
of the
first starting out in our initial designs.
There's no
You were kind of
dysentery for eating.
Uh, no, it was more you were the mayor of Pigtown, and the
Okay.
pigs were going to do your bidding, and then you'd go off on adventures to get treasures to bring back to the pigs, and a lot of that. I mean, it was influenced kind of by what was going on in gaming overall at the time, like all those awful Facebook and Zynga games and all that stuff. But thankfully, we stepped back from the brink a little bit and kind of just let the game run where its legs would take it, and we've ended up kind of where we started before all of that, which is interesting.
Okay. As the writer, I would assume that a lot of the sort of tone of the game and the pathos and the strange sort of Wednesday from Adam's Family feel to it, you know, would be generated by you, and then the art would follow. Is that the method of how it's created?
It's pretty collaborative actually, and it
Okay.
sometimes goes in different directions.